So last lesson we looked over the verb to be, as in I am a doctor, I'm happy, wasn't happy, actually we had a good and so forth. And we left it off at that. We didn't go into possession. Now, in today's lesson, we will both go over possession and another very critical part that will link back to the previous lesson. Now, just to be clear, this is not just something to maybe think about, maybe memorize, but there needs to be a very deep understanding because pretty much all of Turkish is based upon these suffixes that you will see in today's lesson and the previous lesson, lesson number 3. So last time we had the pronouns, and I've just kept them here on the screen. Ben, sen, o, biz, siz, onlar. Now let's actually give them something. Let's say we own what? Let's start with something simple. And let's do pencil. I think we had pencil the last lesson. Kalem. So how would I say my pencil? Let's see. Benim. Oh. Kalemim. Actually, let me start from here. Oh, I didn't copy these. Okay, let me just finish the pronouns in possession. Senin, onun, bizim, and sizin. If you don't understand what the point of onlar is, do look back to the lesson number 3 because there is something very important about this that we will actually touch more upon in this lesson. So it is critical that you understand the previous lessons. So let's copy these down there for later. And benim kalemim, senin kalemin, and we have onun kalemi, and bizim kalemimiz, sizin kalemimiz. Now, benim, my, kalemim. So the suffix is once again the vowel that we've discussed previously. And senin kalemin. This time there's no S. It's just in. In onun we have kalemi. And bizim, our, kalem imiz. And for sizin, we have kalem iniz. And I made this one incorrect. Kalemi. We can, if we want to, depending on the context, decide to put ler. But once again, the plural is given for the group, so it's not an issue anymore. Now, do you see any pattern? Okay. I'll assume you didn't, because I was very vague about the question. Now let me be more specific. We talked about the pronouns previously, being ben, sen, o, bizim, biz, siz, and onlar, yes. So this should be onların. Now, let's take these pronouns as they were. Benim, senin, onun, bizim, sizin, onların. Now I'll ask you again if you see a pattern now, because now you should. Okay, did you see it? Okay. Maybe, and hopefully you did, notice that we have kalemim and benim. We've added the im to the pronoun of I, and the im to the pronoun of, not to the pronoun, to the word of kalem, to say that it's my pencil. We've done the same in san. Senin, kalemin. Same letter. Now here's the interesting one. Why do we have 1, 2, 3 letters for the suffix, and yet only one? We only have kalemi. Why? Well, if you recall our conversation about onlar here, where we closed off that vowel with a buffer of an N, oh, the same thing happened here. Naturally, it should just be ooh. We just added the vowel. We can't because of the vowels. We need those buffers. And hence, instead, we have onun. So onun kalemi. Okay, nice. Now let's move on to the next one. We have bizim kalemimiz. Oh, why don't we have the same one? Kalemim and bizim? Well, because it's already used here in bam. So we want to add this plural, sort of, not exactly. So kalemimiz. And the same happens here. Kalemin, kaleminiz. And the last one, as we said, onların is pretty much a replica of onun. Like o and onlar are pretty much the same. It's just a very simple plural. Now, let's try this real quickly with a vowel to see what happens. And let me just do our onlar in here. And we'll copy it for a third time. That will be our final time. Let's take something that ends with a vowel, and let's take elma, apple. Elma. And let us say my apple. Elma, elmam. You see, this is the interesting part here. Rather than putting a buffer, in possession, things are different. And also because possession is not really a verb per se. It's more of a description, kind of. Because when you say, this is my apple, let's say, that's describing it. Which apple is it? My apple. That's the one. Which car is it? His car. That car. The big car. His car. Once again, it's kind of describing the object here. So they do have different rules. And that thing about the buffer, that worked in verbs. But this is not really a verb. And we will see more about that in a minute. Now, elmam, my apple. How about your apple? Same thing. Elma. And rather than saying elman, elman, we just say elman. What about his? Elma. Now, remember we talked about the buffers. We had the letter N, Y, and S. And I said, well, it's there's so many different ways and places you can use the letter Y, places where you can use the letter N, but the S has a unique place. The S can only be ever used as a buffer for the possession. And hence, elmas, elması. How about our, bizim, elmamız. How about your, sizin, elmanız. And onların, elma. Any guesses? It would be the same as onun, yes, and would be elması. Elması. Okay? And let's do our very final one here until we get to the really exciting part that I look forward to. And let's do benim. This has to be a physical shahab example. So let's do yatak, which means bed. So benim yatak. And let's put this yatakım. But we can't say that. We have these specific shahabs that change. And as we mentioned, the logic and the reasoning behind it is in the second lesson. So I do recommend that you look back to that if you haven't already. And it would become yatağım. What about senin? Yatağın. Yatağın. Onun yatağı. Yatağı. Bizim yatağımız. Sizin yatağınız. Finally, onların yatağı. Now, I think so far everything is quite clear. If there's something that isn't, you can let me know in the description box and I will try to help you with that. But now is the very, very, very interesting part. Oh, wait, I forgot to say something, and I will say that real quick before getting into that interesting part. Let's remember, what about if rather than saying his bed, let's give him a name. Let's call him Sam. So how would we say Sam's bed? Well, remember the pronoun originally? Like, what if we say, for example, Sam is a doctor? We had this sentence before. We had Sam. We actually said he's a good doctor. So Sam i doktor. So if we were saying he is a doctor, o i doktor. So obviously, o takes the place, is the pronoun that takes the place of whatever the noun was. If we want to put it in the space of onun, as in possession, it would work the exact same way. So here, it would be Sam. Oh, of course, we have to remove the N now. We don't need it anymore. There's no need to buffer this letter since it's a consonant. And then this one here, well, this would change to the suitable vowel, which would be Summon. Summon yatağı. Also, there is an apostrophe. Just like in English, when we say Sam's, we would put the apostrophe before that S. Okay? Now, finally, we can do that interesting part. How would I say? Wait, shall I ask you first how would I say it? Or shall I show you and ask you? I'll show you and ask you. This is really fun. I love it. This is kind of the essence of Turkish. Like, this is like one of the really cool parts of Turkish. What do you think this means? Any idea? Doktor sun. Now, remember our conversation about subject, object, verb. It's very important. It's very, very, very critical because this kind of links with the other part where we said how Turkish sentences are all about the vowel. All about the verb. And here, this is our verb, and this can pretty much be our entire sentence. So inside it, it also has the structure of the verb being at the end. So what's the verb here? The verb here is actually the sun here, more specifically. And yes, this might not be the only one. We can say, for example, other things inside. No need to explain that right now. We'll come back to it later on. But the important part is that at the end of it, we have sun, which means you are. Now, we know this is you are. What about this? This is my. I mean, it's definitely not I am, because we cannot have repetition. I wouldn't say I am, I am. So it's definitely different, and hence it is my. So this word over here is actually an entire sentence, and it means doktorum sun. And it means, let me check that. Here's my mistake. Let me fix that. Doktorum. Let's take it like this first. Doktorum sun. This is our verb. You. So that is the subject, of course, as in the verb will relate to the subject. And the subject is apparently you, San. And inside, not the subject anymore. We have something that describes this doctor. And that's the interior here. What is it? It's my. So sen benim doktorumsun. Now, in normal conversation, you no longer need to have these san and benim. That is how it is possible in normal conversation to just use a few words to denote all the meanings that you can possibly think of. Because it's all in the suffixes. Doktorumsun, you are my doctor. Let's try it differently. Let's say, we are their moms. Okay, let's say we're a group of moms sitting down. We're like, oh, these are our kids. We're their moms. It'd be weird if I was one of those, but yes. How would you say that? The word for mom is anne, just in case, because I haven't covered that yet. So how would you use that word to say we are their moms? I'll give you a second. Okay? Let's start. Anne. Now, we are their moms. Who's the subject? In English, the subject comes first, and hence we. So biz. Whose moms? Their moms. That kind of describes us in a sense. So onların. Biz onların anne. Okay. Now, how would we decide the suffix, the order? Well, that's the subject, and that's also the verb, as in we are. That's the whole point of the sentence. It's all saying that we are something. That's our verb. So biz anne is, as in that's the suffix that we covered in the previous lesson, lesson number 3, about how to say we are. Now, onların, their. How do we say that? Well, we said that it is just the vowel, as we covered today. Yatağı. So, biz onların anne is. Now, this is in a very raw form, as in we still haven't taken care of the buffers. We see a vowel here and a vowel here. So what do we need to do? We need to put a buffer, and this is possession. So our buffer will most definitely be S. And then this is not possession. So the buffer will be Y. Biz onların annesiyiz. What about... Oh, and actually, just to make it clear, we don't... We had two options here. This actually is not a great option that we chose, because I made it singular, and we want to say they're moms, so plural. So it's actually better to have gone with anneleriz. And nope, we don't do that. Everything fine? Yes. Everything's fine now. Mothers, we've pluralized it, and we've put the possession, and then we've put we are. Okay? Now, what about if we try something different? Let's, for example, let's say they are our friends. They are our friends. How would we say that? Well, let's see. The main verb, the whole point is that they are. So onlar. What about the other points, like describing the friends? They are our friends, right? So bizim. And then we have the word for friend, arkadaş. So, let's start working on it. First, friends, so plural, arkadaşlar. And then we know that the onlar will be at the end of the sentence. That's they are, that's the verb of it. So we'll come back to it after. We first do bizim, our. Arkadaşlar, ımız, our, and then they are. So, huh. So now we have an option. We've already taken the plural and put it over here. So we can actually end it here. As onlar doesn't have a mandatory suffix. It has an optional one. Let's use it nonetheless. Onlar bizim arkadaşlarımızdır. Is'dır here is optional, but it does help in making the meaning clearer as to show that we are saying they are. Okay? So I understand that this may seem confusing, and to some it may even seem to a point unnecessary, but it is actually vital because that's how all the other suffixes in Turkish work. It's all about learning how to combine them correctly, because pretty much all such suffixes can be combined because they are the alternative to words. In Turkish, we don't try to use that many words, we try to use more suffixes instead. So if you really understand the lessons so far, just these 4 lessons, that alone can give you a very solid foundation to build on later on. And if you want to go over this, or you want to go over something else in the future, you can always check out the tutoring link in the description box down below. I've been working on that platform for quite some time now. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below, and I will hopefully continue in the next lesson, this time addressing more verbs and increasing our vocab.